I'd been driving for hours along a back road in rural Missouri. It was nearly midnight, and I needed to take a break. I found a small truck stop parking lot near a gas station, dimly lit by a few tired streetlights, with only a handful of other vehicles parked around. I pulled over, shut off the engine, and stepped out to stretch my legs. The air was cool and a bit damp, and the silence was broken only by the rustling of leaves stirred by the wind. As I walked toward the restrooms, I noticed a man sitting on an old bench near the gas station entrance. He looked rough around the edges, leather jacket, messy hair, and a stare that didn't promise anything good. I tried to avoid him, but he lifted his head and stared straight at me. "Hey, you. Yeah, you. What are you doing here all alone at this hour?" he asked in a hoarse voice. I told him I was just taking a break, nothing special, but he smiled strangely, like he didn't believe me. He started walking toward me, slowly but deliberately. "You know, folks around here don't like guys like you. Always out and about, always with trucks, always alone," he said, closing the distance. I tried to stay calm, saying I didn't want any trouble and just wanted a moment of peace. But he raised his voice, accusing me of giving him a dirty look, something I hadn't done. The words got sharper, the tone louder. I realized there was no way out if I wanted to avoid trouble. Before I could react, he grabbed the collar of my jacket and threw a punch toward my chest. I didn't have much time to react, but I instinctively pushed his arm away and threw a couple of punches in his face to defend myself. It wasn't the kind of street fight you see in movies. No knives, no weapons, just a punch and a shove here and there. But it was enough to make it clear I wasn't messing around. The man, visibly surprised, took a step back but didn't seem ready to give up. He threatened me again, saying I couldn't just walk away so easily. I knew I had to get out of there, so I took advantage of a moment when he was distracted and ran toward my truck. I jumped in the cab, locked the doors, and started the engine quickly. I heard his footsteps coming closer as he tried to open the door, but he couldn't. I shifted into gear and sped away, leaving that place behind. I don't know who that man was or what he really wanted, but that night I learned you can never let your guard down, especially when you're alone in isolated spots. Since then, I try to avoid stops in quiet places at night, and, if I can, I prefer well-lit areas with more people around. It was a tough lesson, but one I'll never forget. It was a late October night, and I was driving through northern Montana with my truck loaded full of industrial equipment. My driving shift had started at sunset, and the plan was to stop for sleep only at dawn. But something drained me faster than usual: the isolation. That night, the CB radio crackled endlessly, but with no human voice, just static. My phone had been dead for miles. No signal, just me, the engine, and a desolate landscape. I decided to pull over at a gravel pull-off on a side road, one that didn't even show up on my GPS. There were no lights, no signs, just an old abandoned gas station, its sagging roof threatening to collapse. The faded sign above creaked gently in the breeze. I killed the engine and pulled the brake. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the sound of cooling metal and the wind brushing against the panels. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. That's when I noticed it, in the windshield lit faintly by the full moon, a dark silhouette. At first I thought it was just my own reflection, but the longer I looked, the more wrong it felt. The angle didn't line up with my body. It was off-center, unmoving, like someone was sitting on the hood. But when I moved, it didn't. I flipped on the headlights. The lot was empty. Nothing, No figure, no trace. I felt stupid, probably just fatigue. Maybe it was the warped glass or a trick of the moonlight. I grabbed a water bottle and tried to distract myself with an old podcast episode about paranormal sightings, but my eyes kept drifting back to the windshield every few minutes, like I was waiting for something to return. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard a sharp noise. Something slapped the hood, not a metallic clang, more like a flat, heavy thump, like a palm hitting steel. I froze. My breathing slowed. I didn't dare move. Slowly, I leaned toward the side window to look out, but again, there was nothing. I started to wonder if I was slipping into a waking dream. I'd driven too many hours. Maybe exhaustion was warping my senses, but then I heard breathing, not mine, another, deep, heavy, wet. It was coming from behind me, from the small sleeper cabin. I went completely still. I could feel my pulse in my neck. I turned my head slowly, but no one was there. I looked back at the windshield, and there it was again. The reflection. Same spot, as if it had never left. Only this time, it was smiling. A wide grin that wasn't mine. That was it. I didn't check the sleeper. I didn't step outside. I didn't look for prints. I turned the key, fired up the engine, and drove with the headlights off. I didn't stop until I'd gone more than 40 miles and saw the glowing lights of a truck stop. One of those always open ones, with drivers standing around smoking and engines humming. I parked. I got out. I walked for 15 minutes around the lot just to remind myself I was awake, that this was real. Since that night, I've never slept in a pitch-black area again. Every time I stop, I wipe my windshield clean. Every reflection, even the harmless ones, gives me chills. I don't know what I really saw that night. I don't know if it was something paranormal or just my mind breaking down. But one thing I know for sure, that reflection wasn't me. Me and David, my boyfriend at the time, had been on the road for months. We slept in the cab, ate at highway rest stops, and spent our evenings chatting with other truckers on the CB radio. It was our only real pastime. Jokes, updates, weird stories, and sometimes a new voice would pop up. It was on a cold night in Arkansas when we heard him for the first time. Channel clear? Anyone listening? He had a rough voice, like sandpaper, but he spoke politely. Said his handle was Iron Jack. Said he'd been running that route for years. He knew everything. Cleanest restrooms, safest lots, and the spots where you shouldn't stop after midnight. At first, he just seemed like a weird, talkative guy. Always tuned in. Seemed to know when we were nearby. Over time, he became a familiar presence. Sometimes he gave advice, made jokes, complained about traffic or the loneliness of the road. Then the rumors started. One day, on a nearby channel, we heard truckers talking about a girl found dead behind a rig in Tucumcari, New Mexico. Word was, it was a violent client, maybe a driver. They said it wasn't the first. David joked with Jack, "Hey, Jack, you're always around those places. You're not the guy they're looking for, right?" Jack laughed, but then he said something that made the air in the cab freeze. "If it was me, you think anyone would ever find out?" That night, we parked at a small turnout near the Texas-Oklahoma border. It was dark, quiet, only a few rigs around. David stepped out to stretch his legs. I stayed in the passenger seat, looking ahead. A few spots away, there was a dark-colored semi, windows tinted, dim red light glowing inside. A man sat motionless in the cab, completely still. I watched for a few seconds. Then suddenly, he smiled, a thin, chilling smile. I pulled the curtain and told David we needed to leave, but we didn't make it in time. The radio crackled on by itself. Quiet night, huh? But not for everyone. It was Iron Jack. His voice was lower than usual, slower. Some girls, they still think the world's safe, but the road doesn't forgive. Some of us, we have to clean up the filth. Then silence. 10 minutes later, sirens. A trucker screamed over the radio. Call 911. There's a woman down behind a trailer. It had happened again. Another girl. The police came to ask questions, but we hadn't seen anything. Just that creepy rig, now gone. 3 months later, we stopped at a tiny lot near Baton Rouge. Just 3 rigs and a lone security car. We turned on the radio. Instantly, Jack. His voice was clearer now, like he was right beside us. Hey, David. Still riding with her, huh? Better keep her close. Wouldn't want her ending up like the others. We stared at each other. How the hell did he know I was there? That we were in that exact spot? Then it happened. A rig slowly rolled past us. Matte black, old, no markings. The driver looked at us. Same face as the man at that rest stop. Same damn smile. On his door, rusty chrome letters spelled out, Iron Jack. We froze, didn't speak a word. David fired up the engine and pulled out, didn't even grab his coffee. From that day on, no more radios, no more isolated stops, and never again a hey on Channel 19.